and welcome back to Mr. Caro Plays FM24. Today we're going to look at how to manage wages, and this includes kind of offering contracts. How do we get the best deal for our kind of player, and how do we make that benefit our finances the most? Now, if we go to our scouting tab to start off with, and we look at how much in wages we currently have. Now, it's saying we've got £2,350 kind of left to spend on a kind of player or a couple of players, whatever that may be. How can we increase this from this screen alone? And the answer to that is yes, we can. If we go to our transfer budget and we scroll over to wages, we can increase that wages. Now, depending on how much is in your transfer budget, will obviously will impact how much you get. So in our particular case, we didn't have a fantastic amount in there, so we may be able to get maybe 1,000 more if we go all the way to the end. Now, the only obviously negative to this is you are decreasing your transfer budget. However, in certain situations, maybe you're in a league where you don't actually spend much transfer money, having more wages, perhaps for free agents, etc., is going to benefit you more. And certainly I have seen that in the Irish Premier League, for example. I'm not spending a great deal of money necessarily, but I am trying to get those kind of players from England who will drop into my team, and they're kind of more often not being free transfers, so to speak. So obviously, then you can see it's brought the wages straight up from 2 to 5. So we gained an extra 3,000 in that method. Now, what we can also do is we can go over to our scouting budget. And in theory, and this is not a precise science, because sometimes once you've decreased as much transfer budget as you can, it doesn't allow you to add any wages straight away. But if you did have a massive scouting budget, you can increase the transfer budget, which obviously, again, will impact how much scouting budget you have. But if you've got a surplus, or if you're closer to the end of the season, or you really need extra wages, for example, a last resort kind of deal, you can increase your transfer budget from there. And obviously, like I say, there is a negative to this. However, for this video demonstration, we will just add it all in. Like I say, sometimes this won't allow you to then automatically do the wage budget. But yeah, so you'll see it won't. But over time it would, right? So in a couple of weeks, for example, it may then allow you to add more into it. But it'd be more of a waiting game if you did it all in that method altogether. If you had, however, just added to your transfer budget before you done that and then brought it down, it probably would have allowed you to get more. So kind of that was a mistake in the way that I showed you. However, you get the idea and you get the method behind that. So that's essentially wages in terms of the easy, no asking for anything kind of additional wages you can get. You can also go down to your club vision and you can talk to your board in finances. Sometimes this isn't available. In this case, it is not. However, throughout the season, it may say increase wages, increase transfer. Now, the reason why I say transfer as well is much like increasing it from the scouting budget or from the transfer budget. If you were to get them to increase the transfer budget from the board, say they've rejected your wages for whatever reason, and for whatever reason they say yes to the transfer budget, you can also take it from that in that vein as well. Again, it may not be instantaneous, but if you're playing a waiting game and they do that, and people go, no, they wouldn't do that. However, I can guarantee that has worked for me in the past. They have definitely said no to wages, and then for whatever reason then said yes to transfer. So not necessarily every time. However, we're talking about opportunities that you can use to exploit that. Now, if we go to our team, another thing you can do, let's pick out a player who I'm going to offer a new contract to. Assuming they want a new contract. So we'll go for our discussion with the agent, just because it tends to like that. It's saying that he wants 725 to 875. You can decrease it by going here as well. Typically, pretty much every single time they will accept that, and you'll see it's gone down in that vein. So that's one way to decrease the wages from the off. I didn't even think of that initially, but yeah, that is one way you can do that, going straight through the agent. Obviously, sometimes what I've found is that they still will go in at the higher price. However, it's good to know how much money they're looking for. Now, if we go into our enter contract negotiation, now, typically, obviously, in these situations, if you're renewing, unless it's an older player, you are going to have to somehow fight to keep that wages perhaps low or the playing time lower. However, if it is worth to say, if you talk to the agent, that sometimes they will decrease that and at least make it competitive when you go to offer a deal. So you can see that he's only asking for 625. Now, what you can do is even going even lower. Now, what I always try to do is I try to get rid of these loyalty and agent fees as much as humanly possible without giving as many clauses away as I can. because obviously the more clauses, the more negative and the more money that player will get. Now, it is worth saying if you do add a clause in here, and maybe and you never intend to get relegated, now it's a risk. However, if you're saying that I am not going to get relegated, I am too good to get relegated, I'm happy that I'll take the risk, you can put this relegation clause in and put it at 0, and you'll be surprised the amount of players that will accept a bad deal with the 0 relegation release clause. Like I say, hey, if you've got to back yourself on that, okay, you got to assume that you're not going to get relegated. And for many teams, that is, you're not going to get relegated. So that's a quality thing you can put in. I don't know if you're in a league where you can't get relegated. If that's still available to you, I haven't tested that, but if it is, it's a good, probably definitely put that in. But yeah, if we go and offer that deal now, will come back again, and then you'll go through the merry-go-round of offering again. Now, it is worth saying that if you are getting rid of the agent fees and loyalty fees, then sometimes, to be honest, I will still go in at the same price. I'll try to go again just to double check. In this case, he said no. But I wonder if you just take away, usually when you go 0 these two out now, what you'll find is that because you've offered a better deal in terms of giving him a slightly higher wage, you will get exactly that he'll go for it. Yeah, and in this case he has. And that is very common. You think you kind of have to almost ask for less, the 600. They're going to bring that back to 625. So you've kind of compromised there, if you like. And then you're taking away the loyalty and the agent fee. And then if you keep it at 625 in this particular example, he will go for it because he still thinks he is getting a deal. Then if we go and finalize that deal in a couple of days, that will go through. And that is exactly the same when offering a player who's not at your team. The same kind of method. I have found it works that you can, one, get those agent fees down and also still encourage them to come to you because they're getting something a little bit back, okay, something better back. You can also do that by adding in clauses like how many goals, maybe a centre back, maybe you can get assists and goals as 50, for example. Unless that centre back is prolific in the air, they're not going to get through to 50 goals, and that team is kind of giving you, or that player is agreeing to a lesser deal in some aspects to get that clause in there because you kind of outsmarted the computer. And for whatever reason, the computer seems to take the bait quite often on that occasion as well. Now, that was the last tip I've got to offer today. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Hit that notification button for more videos. Thank you and goodbye.